All right, my name is Anthony Archuleta. I'm in Dr. Bryson's Hume 302 class, and today what I did for my Hume project was a psychoanalysis of Adolf Hitler. So here are some of the disorders that I'm going to go over with you today. The first disorder is obsessive compulsive disorder, schizophrenia disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. These are just some of the disorders that doctors have clarified that Adolf Hitler was diagnosed with during the time, and if not during the time, that they found out. So who was Adolf Hitler? So a little background about him. So he was born on April 20th, 1889. He was born in a small town named Brno in Austria-Hungary during the time, but now current day Austria. His father and mother were named Alois and Clara Hitler. He had 3 sisters named Paula, Angela, and Ida Hitler. He had 4 brothers named Alois Jr., Edmund, Gustav, and Otto Hitler. And he fought in World War I as a Lance Corporal in the Bavarian Army. And then he was the supreme leader, commander-in-chief of the German forces for Nazi Germany during World War II. And then Hitler died on April 30th, 1945 by killing himself, suicide. So a little bit of early childhood. So Hitler's family moved to Linz in 1898, and Hitler had a passion for visual arts when he was young, like painting. He liked walking around in the forest, just being one with nature. He seemed like a very innocent child during the time. Hitler and his father had a brutal relationship. His father was very cruel and physically abusive. He would beat him as well as his older brother with a whip brutally and regularly. Okay, this wasn't normal for a typical household. Yes, you have discipline, but this was to the part where he'd be bleeding and brutally and wouldn't know how to defend himself. Adolf would get whippings due to his rebellious behavior. His father didn't agree with him, how his lifestyle, how he wasn't doing so well in school, didn't agree with his passion for arts and crafts. And by the time he turned 11, this was a sign that he refused to give his father the satisfaction of crying, even after being whipped 32 times. So he would control his anger and his emotions just so he wouldn't let his father get the satisfaction from it. Continued with Hitler being overpowered by his father and confronted with situations he could not control. He learned how to control his own emotions and actions. So he was very dull and he was able to hold everything inside. His father passed away when he was 14 years old, and it is believed that his hatred towards Jews comes from his resentment and revenge for narcissistic damage and feelings of inferiority, which are all brought upon by his father. Rise to power. So before I get into this, a little bit why I went into his early childhood is because in the psychological world, people can get affected with personality disorders and stuff like that due off of nature versus nurture. So nurture is the way, the upbringing of a child, when nature is, their environment, their genetics and stuff. But more of these come from the nurture realm, and how nurture plays a big factor, way bigger than nature. So his rise to power. So politicians during the time ran for positions of power rather for good than for evil to help the nation. And Hitler was seeking for power and control of his life as well as in others during that time for his resentment from his father. Due to Hitler's helplessness and powerlessness that he got from his father, abusing him through his early life, he had an urge and will to power over those and others. So first, obsessive compulsive disorder, also known as OCD. So what it is, compulsions are learned behaviors which become repetitive, habitual when they are associated with relief from anxiety. So chemical, structural, and functional abnormalities in the brain are the cause. So this happens from when you have anxiety about something because you're stressing about it, you keep doing the compulsions repeatedly, even to the point where you can't control them. So Hitler and his OCD. So Hitler had severe anxiety that he coped with using OCD. And OCD by definition is typically an anxiety disorder, and OCD is the way to cope with it. And so psychologically, as an ultimately losing battle for power and control over the inescapable's reality or existential activity. So it doesn't make sense. So to point for an example, someone with OCD can wash their hands one time, but that same person will wash their hands 5 to 10 times. Even though they know it's clean, they keep doing it because deep down in their brain, their anxiety, afraid of something's worse or it's being dirty, it's not realistic. So it's a mental illness. And this all comes to play with this strive for power. So about his Aryan race, how he wanted blonde hair, blue eye, how he was a perfectionist, how the point where during World War II when he invaded Russia, when he was advised by others not to, but he just wanted that perfectionist, he needed everything to be the same, he needed total power, he wouldn't settle for anything less. Schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is a long-term mental disorder of a type involving a breakdown in a relation between thought, emotion, behavior, and leading to faulty perception, inappropriate actions, and feelings. Withdraw from the reality and personal relationships into fantasy and delusions and a sense of mental fragmentation. So schizophrenia, a big thing that this involves with Hitler is that he believes that he was chosen by fate to liberate the German people from their dangerous threats of the Jews, which wouldn't make really sense. He had delusions, and he believes his fantasy and by fate that he was the one chosen to save the Germans. He was also suffering from hallucinations, delusions, hearing voices, irrational jealousy, panic attacks, and many more. He had a lot of signs of schizophrenia during his time in office for Hitler, for Germany. This led to severe paranoia. So with schizophrenia comes the paranoia because you start hearing voices, you start seeing things, and it starts messing with your brain. So with his paranoia, his schizophrenia allowed his stress to be put under total control over Germans and helped him control their pathological tendencies. So his paranoia and how he was freaking out and stuff. So how he was freaking out and all that helped him lead toward a psychological aspect of brainwashing Germans. And he used them to promote nationalism with Germans and develop their hatred toward alleged prosecutions. And he believed that this was triggered because of the poisoning suffered during World War I. So that's a nature aspect. Okay, so they believe that he was poisoned during World War I, and that did something neurologically to his brain that affected him. Antisocial personality disorders. So this is probably the most common one that you can agree with among Hitler. So a mental condition in which a person consistently shows no regard for right or wrong and ignores the rights of feelings of others. People with antisocial personality disorder tend to antagonize, manipulate, or treat others harshly or with callous indifference. They show no guilt or remorse for their behavior. So Hitler in this disorder, World War II is a huge amount of reasons why this is believed that he had antisocial disorder. He had no empathy towards Jews or anyone during the war, not even women or children. He had a complete lack of social responsibility. And he was compared to Julius Caesar and Joseph Stalin in common traits of psychopath due to tendencies and active impulses to project their hostility towards people. So the way how he was hostile compared to others, the way that he didn't care about anybody, he just did what he wanted for himself. Antisocial doesn't mean you don't get along with others. Antisocial means I have no empathy, I have no feelings towards anybody, and I do what I want. And so here's a quote at the very end. It says, "The fate of the Reich depends on me as long as I live. I shall think only of victory. I shall annihilate everyone who is opposed to me." So here's another quote that shows that Hitler's mindset when he was in power. So insane or evil. So I leave you with this today. After the presentation, many believe that he is evil, but at the same time, do you think that he was just insane, that he had a problem with his mind, or do you think in his heart he was evil? And that's it.